Salam alaikum. Winston Churchill once said, "To each there comes in their lifetime a special moment when they're tapped on the shoulder and offered the chance to do a very special thing, unique to them." What a tragedy, Churchill said, what a tragedy if that moment finds them unprepared, uncourageous for that which could have been their finest hour. This week is one of those special moments. We're gathering here in Riyadh among some of the world's most greatest minds. We gather to address some of humanity's most pressing issues. We gather to seize that very special moment that Churchill speaks about. And so, we must be prepared to be bold and act with courage in everything that counts. And so let me take you on a journey to discover how to build courage and how anyone here can cultivate it. You'll find some clues in the story that I'm about to share with you. Let me introduce you to one of my all-time heroes, Salvatore, also known as Totò. Salvatore's story takes place in Sicily, the large island in the south of Italy. Sicily is a land of contrast. On one hand, seductively beautiful, with 3,000 years of ancient histories and cultural treasures. A land of poets where the scent of orange groves literally intoxicates your senses. This is an island that is brimming with picturesque fishing villages and baroque towns, straight out of a movie scene. It is one of the most captivating places in the world. And yet it is also a place where, in the land of contrasts, Sicily, the beautiful and the ugly stand side by side. This has long been one of the most poorest regions in Europe, held together by a strong sense of community and the warmth and generosity of the Sicilian people, but also ripped apart by violence. Just a word of warning, some of the photos I might share with you now could be distressing to some of you. Between the 1950s and the 1990s, the Sicilian mafia, also known as La Cosa Nostra, murders thousands. Anyone who challenges them. Magistrates, journalists, even priests who are trying to help the youngest in the poorer neighborhoods that are controlled by the mafia. For decades, La Cosa Nostra, the Sicilian mafia, ranked as the most powerful criminal organization in the world. But now I want to transport you back in the 1950s. Salvatore grows up in a small town called Riesi, a mafia stronghold. Sorry team, the video isn't running. Just as a thanks, Tom. Give me a second. Perfect. Riesi, Sicily, at this point is just coming out of the Second World War. It's broken, it's vulnerable. It's the perfect breeding ground for the mafia who preys on the desperate. Riesi is also known for its mines, especially its sulfur mines. These are places where working conditions were extreme, dangerous, brutal, degrading. This photo was taken at the entrance of the mines. It says, "Prima I doveri, poi i diritti." First your obligations, then your rights. And once the sulfur was extracted inside these dangerous, dark tunnels, children between the ages of 6 and 10 would carry out these rocks. Children of the poorest families in Riesi, called I Carusi. A boy would typically carry a load of rock weighing between 30 and 80 kilograms back and forth all day. A boy would typically spend from dusk till dawn inside the burning heat of these caves, breathing in the toxic fumes, the unbearable stench of these mines. With the pain of the stones piercing his bare feet and the weight of these rocks crushing his weak back. Surrounded by fear and darkness. Fear of the adult workers who often mistreated these young boys in the dark alleys of the tunnel. Fear that from the bottom of the tunnel could at any point come a roar of fire and make everything explode, collapse like it often did. Mistreatment and child slavery went on for decades in Riesi. And for decades, Riesi was covered in a veil of silence. Why? Meet Giuseppe De Cristina, mafia godfather Giuseppe De Cristina. His family have ruled Riesi with an iron fist for 3 generations. He's a murdering psychopath. He sits on the board of the Sicilian mafia. He also sits on the board of the Sicilian Mining Authority. He is also the person responsible for controlling the drug trade between the Sicilian mafia and the United States, making him one of the most powerful and feared mafia bosses of all times. And so, in Riesi in the 1950s, you didn't speak about the mistreatment in the mines, and you certainly didn't speak about the mafia. But let's go back to Salvatore. He's lucky. He doesn't have to work in the mines. His childhood is happy. He grows up in a family with strong values, proud landowners with value structures, integrity, and hard work and respect. And as a young man, he discovers a passion for politics and for speaking up for the vulnerable, especially the miners. He very quickly moves up the ranks of one of Italy's most important workers' unions. And at the age of only 17, Salvatore is asked to attend and speak at one of the most important workers' union national conferences. And he wants to use this important platform to speak about the misjustice that he's witnessing in Sicily. But he's told not to. He's told not to repeatedly. Salvatore, we have other bigger problems in Sicily. Speak about those. Do not speak about the mines. He gets to the conference, he stands on stage and he looks out on a sea of thousands of people. His hands are shaking, his voice is trembling. Remember, he's only 17. And despite the warnings, he starts speaking. He starts speaking about the misjustice. He starts speaking about the oppression. He starts speaking about the mines. He starts speaking about a recent gas explosion that killed 12 men and children. And he starts speaking about the mafia. He knows that his words carry consequences. He knows that his words can cost his life. But he does it anyway. When he returns back to Sicily, no one picks him up at the train station. He knows that's a warning, and within weeks, a car bomb explodes, killing his political mentor. He now knows that's another warning sign. It is time to leave. Afraid and uncertain about what the future may hold, he decides to flee. He flees to Germany. A few years later, his family received this photograph. It says, "With fond memories, Toto." Leaving your family without giving any explanation, just vanishing, was heartbreaking. But staying or sharing or talking what would have happened or what happened would have endangered not only his own life, it would have endangered the life of those he loved the most. And so he left, never to return to Sicily ever again. But as in life, when sometimes we're going down a journey that we thought we were going down a journey, and suddenly this journey gets ripped apart into a whole different direction that we didn't expect and we certainly didn't want. This can open new doors, and new doors open for Tom. Because thanks to the German that he's picked up as an immigrant in Germany, he's able to charm a young, beautiful medical student, and they fall madly in love. And within months, they decide to have a family. Salvatore was my father. The The story I'm sharing with you, he shared with me just before he died. He always kept it a secret because he didn't want to put anyone else at risk other than himself. The word courage in its Latin root comes from cor, heart, cœur in French, cuore in Italian. My father had a huge heart, and his legacy, it led to a personal journey of me wanting to understand the mechanics of courage and how to build it. And what I found not only surprised me, it changed the paradigm, what I thought courage is and how to cultivate it. And I feel privileged to be sharing with you today what I learned. Aristotle called courage a craft. He wrote, "We become builders by building, and we become harpists by playing the harp. So similarly then, we become brave by doing brave actions." And the first lesson I learned is that to build this craft is to understand what stops us from doing these brave actions, and that is, it always is, fear. The Buddhists say, if you don't understand the nature of fear, if you don't understand how fear feels like, then you can never be fearless. I learned that no human being is without fear, and therefore no one who has ever achieved any greatness has done so without battling with their own anxieties, their own demons, their own fears. The Spartans even worshipped fear. They built temples of fear to recognize its power. What the Spartans believed was that fear is not an absence of courage. On the contrary, it's a full presence of fear, but then with the ability to face it. What I learned is that fear isn't a character trait that some of us have and some of us don't. It's a virtue. The incredible Maya Angelou called it the most important virtue of them all, because without courage, you cannot practice any other virtue consistently. Now, I grew up with a very different paradigm. And I don't know who can resonate with this, but in my family, vulnerability wasn't quite a thing, especially not with my dad, admitting to the fact that we were afraid, no go. And so I always grew up thinking either you are courageous or you're fearful. In other words, either I am brave or I'm a coward. What I've learned from one of my other big heroes, the Buddhist teacher, Pema Chodron, is that this could not be further from the truth. She says, we often believe that these brave people that we look up to, we believe that they have no fear. The reality is, she says, is that they are intimate with fear. And in her book, When Things Fall Apart, she calls fear the vanguard to courage. In other words, we need fear to become courageous. And it's actually when things fall apart, when your back is against the wall, and I'm sure you all have been in this situation, when your back is against the wall, that is when courage is born. And 4 years ago, things really started falling apart for me. Shortly after my dad died, I suffered a spine injury, which left me completely disabled. The level of pain of this type of injury is comparable to that of childbirth. And despite the morphine, my pain didn't stop. It didn't stop for a day, it didn't stop for a night. It didn't stop for an entire year. In fact, it kept getting worse. It felt like someone would be literally on a daily basis drilling into my back, into my nerve, and it would feel like fire traveling down my leg and into my foot, and eventually paralysis kicked in, and I was faced with the fear of quadriplegia and death. I was afraid. I was afraid that everything, all my dreams that I kind of looked forward to were suddenly evaporating. I I was afraid to look my mom in the eyes, knowing how much this was hurting her. I was afraid to face my own mortality. I was afraid that I would never be able to have a family again. And during my third surgery, the doctors had opened my back again. The anesthetist started crying because it turned out that the injury I had was, unlike what they'd predicted, was reversible. The surgeon later told my mom, who was also a doctor, your son had an angel above him. I think it was my dad. My recovery was hard and it was long, and I had to learn how to walk again and wash myself and even socialize. And just when I thought the marathon was over, just when I thought I could cross the finishing line, boom, I get hit with another sledgehammer. I get diagnosed with ME/CFS, an illness that is not very well known, but it's devastating. It often comes after a prolonged physical traumatic period. ME has the lowest quality of life of any disease tested. Your body literally shuts down, and any activity, as small as it is, it becomes completely intolerable. Going to the toilet becomes like a marathon. Watching the television, the light or the noise from the device become agonizing. Spending time with your friends and family becomes impossible. Going to the toilet becomes like a triathlon. And ME doesn't have a cure. Only 5% make a full recovery. Many remain bedridden for years, sometimes even for life. And ME makes it's not just a career-ending disability. It can be a life-destroying one. And hearing this and reading these numbers, it totally crushed me. I've never felt so lonely. But as Pema Chudgeon says, when your back is against the wall, when things really fall apart, that's when you dig in. That's when you start fighting like there's no tomorrow. And I had to. You choose courage. You become intimate with your own fear. Courage to me back then meant realizing the fact that life is fragile, that it's really, really fragile. Courage meant dealing with the consequences, no matter how scary the outcome. And courage also meant dealing with the regret that I hadn't really lived up to my full potential, and that now maybe it was too late to make amendments. After two and a half years of fighting, I turned the tide. I was one of the 5%. I'm incredibly fortunate. I get to stand here and tell my story, and that not only makes me incredibly proud, it's the greatest gift that I could have ever imagined. Thank you. Thank you. Life, as they say, isn't just a dress rehearsal. It's now, and it's so precious. And there are 3 principles that I took away from this. 3 principles that have helped me build bravery through this tough time. 3 principles that I believe have made me emerge stronger and clearer and more passionate about life than ever before. And I would love to share these principles with you. And I hope that some of them will help you on your journey. Oops. The first principle is that the adversity that we face, that we all face along our journey, not just makes the journey more glorious, it makes the outcome more glorious. Malcolm X, he puts it in a beautiful way. He says, there is no better teacher than pain. There is no better teacher than adversity. He says every loss, every defeat, every heartbreak contains its own seed, its own lesson on how to improve. And adversity sucks. I'm not here to glorify it. Pain sucks, and it's unavoidable for all of us. But I believe that it breeds greatness. There's a Japanese art form that dates back to the 15th century called kintsugi. And in kintsugi masters, as they call, they take broken plates and cups and bowls, and instead of fixing them back to their original state, they make them better. They use a special lacquer mixed with gold and silver and sometimes even platinum, and the result, a design of intricate veins and irregular lines that are not seen as flaws. They're not seen as flaws. Actually, kintsugi was invented to turn cracks into something even more beautiful. And COVID has left many broken plates and many broken cups. It has left many scars and cracks, but if we choose to, we can turn those cracks into armor, and we can turn that pain into progress. And so ask yourself, what is your kintsugi? What has your kintsugi been in your lifetime, and how has it made you braver? The second principle I want to share with you is this. We step up, not just for us, we step up for others. And here I want to share a story with you of an American soldier called Jeremiah Denton. This is the guy. We're at the height of the Vietnam War. It's 1965, and Denton gets detained in a hellish prison called the Hanoi Hilton. He spends 8 years in this hellhole, 8 years of mistreatment and torture. And 4 of these 8 years he spends in total isolation. Back home, he leaves his family, his wife Jane, who you can see on the left, and 7 children. One day he gets dragged into a dark cell. He gets put on a stool, and he's left on a stool for 3 days with no food and no sleep, handcuffed, his feet tied. And after the 3rd day, he gets dragged out and he's told, Denton, you're going to get interviewed. You're going to get interviewed for a live propaganda film that it's going to be broadcasted across the United States. And as Denton, fresh with his torture in his mind, he walks into the room with the camera crew. You have to imagine this, his family are sat back home and they're watching this live on the 6 o'clock news, and they shriek in horror as they see their father, usually stronger than life, strong, larger than life, and confident man looking weak and frail and clearly afraid. And around them are all the prison guards, and they're watching every single word that Denton is saying. And while the interviewer starts his question, Denton is weighing up his options. On one hand, he could say what his captors want him to say. On the other, what anything else would mean even more torture, even more beating, potentially death. And as the camera starts rolling, it looks like the camera lights are blinding him. He's been in a dark dungeon for months, and he looks confused and dazed, unwell. But then watch this, he starts blinking. He starts blinking. But he's not blinking. He's not blinking because of the camera lights. He's blinking in Morse code. Watch this.
I get adequate food and adequate clothing and medical care when I require it.
He's blinking the letters T-O-R-T-U-R-E. He spells out torture over and over again throughout the interview. A message of defiance to stand up for his fellow prisoners. A message of defiance that he wants to send out to the world to show them the atrocities that they were being.
Whatever the position of my government is, I believe in it. Yes, sir. I am a member.
Denton was afraid. A level of fear that probably most of us could never even comprehend. And yet when he was tapped on the shoulder, he chose courage, insane courage. Hero, the word hero in its Latin root comes from servo, servant. a servant to something greater than yourself. Fear will always, always, always ask us, what if? What if? What if? A hero doesn't care about that. A hero focuses on others. On the other hand, courage always asks, if not me, then who? And if not now, then when? There's a passage from the American poet Longfellow, which I love, which I want to read out to you, which goes, lives of great women and men all remind us we can make our own lives sublime. Departing, leave behind us footprints on the sand of time. But what is the point? What is the point of leaving footprints in the sand of time, like Longfellow says? The point is, we leave a trail. Think about this. Most of our brave ancestors are gone now. My dad is gone now, but doesn't their experience, their memory, their courage come back to serve us in our most difficult moments? A hero doesn't just make an impact on others. A hero infuses others with courage. A hero makes others proud. Long after they're gone, they leave a trail in the sand of time forever. What will you leave behind? The third principle I want to share with you is such a simple one. It's such a simple one, but such an important one. To get over fear, when we're scared, we just need to go. It's the only way. We just need to go. This was the last vacation we took as a family together. The lady in the middle is another one of my big heroes, my mom, Andrea. Actually, I'm going to share this with you. I recently found out that the ancient Greek word for courage is Andrea, just like my amazing mom. And my dad, he had this habit, which I used to find incredibly annoying. And I don't know if any of you have this with their with their parents, or any parents who do this with their teenage children, but he always used to give me advice when I wasn't looking for any. Stand up straight, put your shoulders up, get up early, speak less, listen more, etc., etc. And he had this long list. And then he always used to say this one thing: testa giù e vai. Put your head down and just go. And there's one guy who did exactly just that, Mamoru Gassama. Let me give you a bit of context. It's 2018. Gassama is a 22-year-old Malian immigrant, an illegal immigrant living in France. And he's walking the streets of Paris when he sees lots of confusion and people shouting and honking the horn, and he looks up and he sees this scene of this horrific scene. There's a 4-year-old boy who's fallen off the balcony and is now holding onto dear life on the balcony 2 stories below, and he's about to fall off. And everyone's shouting, and everyone is in total disarray, and no one knows what to do. And Gassama, the 22-year-old Malian, he just starts running towards the building, and watch what he does next.
Là, je pète un câble. La tête de ma mère, je pète un câble. Allez, vas-y. Ouais. Bravo. Là, le torrent, je pète un câble.
I get goosebumps every time I still see it. To the interviews, he then said, I did not think about the risk. I did it because it's a child. Because, and listen to this, because if you weigh up too long whether you go or you don't go, you never go. You never go. And when they asked him, Where did you learn to climb, Gassama? His response was, I never tried it before. I don't know. There are no big trees in my country, Mali. I don't know. I just go. Testa giù e vai, just as my father would say. And what the world didn't know when this video went viral, and I've seen a few heads nodding, I'm sure many of you have seen this video before. What the world didn't know is that Gassama had trained for this moment. He trained for this moment. At the age of 15, he left Mali to risk life and limb in search for opportunity. He crossed the Sahara Desert, a journey that many do not survive. He crossed Burkina Faso and Niger and Libya. He braved gunfire and imprisonment and torture. He braved the Mediterranean Sea in an unsafe boat only to land in an overcrowded refugee camp of all places in my father's homeland, Sicily. And just as my dad and the millions of immigrants and refugees around the world, leaving your family, leaving your country, to face uncertainty and to face prejudice, well, that might well be one of the most courageous things a human being can do. Remember what Aristotle said, we become brave by doing brave actions. Gassama had a long history of brave actions that made him prepare for that moment when he was tapped on the shoulder. What I learned is that the opposite of courage isn't cowardice. The opposite of courage is inaction. In other words, the failure to act. Fear will always push us towards inaction. It will always push us towards inaction. But if we wish to be great, we cannot be passive. We cannot wait. If we wait too long, like Gassama says, if we weigh up our options way too long, if we go or we don't go, then our self-preservation kicks in. And unlike Gassama, we freeze. We do nothing. Courage is a choice. Courage is a habit. And courage must be trained, because how do we expect to do the big things that really scare us if we haven't even practiced the small ones? And why am I sharing all these stories with you? I am because I believe that all of us have the potential to be heroes. We do. In fact, we must, especially the people who are attending LEAP this week. We must, because the world needs it. And being a hero doesn't mean climbing buildings. It doesn't mean being a prisoner of war for 8 years like Denton did. It requires cultivating courage in our daily lives. It's the sum total of all the small brave actions that we choose to do next. At Google, where I work, we conduct a research every year. We look at the data. We look at the most searched questions and the most searched moments of the year. And unsurprisingly, the data is showing us just how much COVID and the pandemic has infiltrated our daily lives. It shows that the world is in pain, that the whole world is in pain. But the data also shows us just how many everyday people have stepped up as heroes to serve those around them. Let me show you the most searched questions of this year.
This year has been extremely challenging for me. I am broken. And I am healing.
I'm here at the memorial wall. I wanted to do something to remember my mom.
For some reason, I'm having anxiety. Obviously, it's normal with everything that's going on right now.
I think I'm gonna take a break for a while.
You can get through it, and if you can get through it, there's a greater reward on the other side.
Just like anybody else, I'm just trying to do my little part to try and save my community.
I'm just really excited we're back open.
And I am smiling under my mask.
Incredible scenes on the day the fans came back.
Welcome back to the theater.
You guys, it's been so long.
You're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're just like, there I am.
Be your best. Never, ever, ever stop dreaming. I don't care what they tell you.
We agree in the above entitled matter as to count 3, find the defendant guilty.
I We are not drowning, we are fighting.
We cannot keep quiet about climate injustice. No action is too small.
We just have to band together as a community and get people's lives back.
Even as we grieved, we grew, that even as we hurt, we hoped, that even as we tired, we tried, that we'll forever be tied together, victorious.
What a year. What a year. And you know what the cool thing is that today and this whole week we're here at Leap to do important work, to start important work that the world is counting on. And I really believe that we as the global technology community, we business leaders and government leaders, we innovators and entrepreneurs, we mothers and fathers, we members of our communities, we have a duty. And we've all been tapped on the shoulder. We have a duty to step forward and lead when others are hiding at the back of the room. We have a duty to dare when others are playing it safe. We have a duty to disrupt when others are hesitant. And we've been called to make a difference. And if we don't, then we deprive the world of something. And what is our reward for doing all of this? Well, the reward is that we infuse our teams with courage, we infuse our communities with courage. We do it to make our ancestors proud, we do it to make our families proud, we do it to make our future generations proud, we do it to make the world a better place. And to do so, it doesn't require heroic acts. We've heard from Christopher, from Klein, SEO from SAP yesterday, that at the core of cultural change is courage. Being a manager, like many of you, and delivering bad news to an employee takes courage. Being a leader and saying, sorry, I screwed up, takes courage. It's courageous to get up in the morning when you're depressed. It takes courage to say, I love you, knowing that your heart might get broken in the meantime. Asking for help is courageous. Leaving a job, leaving a relationship that doesn't work anymore takes a lot of courage. Being with a person that is dying and going through the death of someone that you love so much is ultimate courage. And so everybody here, everybody has gone to bed one night or another with grief or despair or fear, and yet we've all arisen with bravery to face what we had to face. Mighty bravery that sometimes we didn't even know we had inside of us. And so do not forget, you've all been courageous. That's what's brought you here. And we've all been heroes, we just sometimes forget. This is the last photograph that I took with my dad. And this time I asked him for advice. I asked him, Papi, how do I become a father like you? And he was already struggling to speak at this time, but he responded with a lot of certainty. He said, Amorellino, my love, believe in yourself like I believe in you. If you get a chance, find a partner like your mom and then love her unconditionally. And do not have regrets. What I learned from my father is that regret is the choice of, it's a cost of inaction. It's a choice of choosing comfort over opportunity. It's the cost of choosing fear over courage, and that's a very heavy cost that I do not want to pay at the end of my lifetime. And there's a very simple formula. There's a very simple formula to avoid regret, and that is the more courage you have in your life, the more your life will expand. And so the next time that you being tapped on the shoulder, the next time that you being offered that special chance, choose courage even if you're afraid. In fact, especially if you're afraid. Choose courage. Choose courage because you'll do things and you'll go places that otherwise would be completely denied to you. Choose courage and you'll see beauty and things that otherwise would have never happened. Choose courage and you leave a trail in the sand of time. Here's the last thing I want to leave you with. We choose to be heroes. And if we don't, that's on us. And so, what will you choose today? Shukran.